What's up guys, Maelstrom here. If you enjoy the video then like, subscribe and leave a comment down below so I can keep on making these awesome videos for you guys. Pat 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 pat. The steady rhythm of Kakashi's running mixed with the rushing sound of blood in his ears. The edges of his vision were blurred with red, and the path ahead was stretched with shadows, and all Kakashi wanted to do was return home with a grinning, young knuckle-headed boy. Strangely enough, Kakashi was hoping Orochimaru had taken Sasuke with him, that he had left Naruto. If he hadn't, Kakashi was only good enough for one trip, and the Hokage had specifically instructed him to take back Sasuke if he was still alive. That meant leaving Naruto to die. Snap out of it, Kakashi. Orochimaru wouldn't just leave Sasuke. He wants the boy badly enough to infiltrate the Leaf Village. It'll be only Naruto there. With that in mind, Kakashi hurried his pace. He could feel his body begin to shut down. The blood that he had lost was significant enough to warrant a visit to the hospital. The red on the edges of his vision were thickening. He really needed a rest. You should rest, at least for a minute. Pakken spoke from ahead, slowing down and casting a worried glance Kakashi's way. I can't. Naruto could be dying out there. Kakashi managed to grunt out, regretting the lost breath almost instantly. Pakken didn't hesitate to follow the indirect order. He continued to follow the scent trail left by Naruto. He too was praying that there would be only the knuckle-headed ninja. The moon hung heavy in the sky, as full and large as a dinner platter. The night was beautiful, crickets faintly chirping in the distance. Those around him had fallen silent. Suddenly Kakashi's legs tangled together and he fell to the floor in a tumbling heap. He skidded to a stop many meters from where he had first tripped, and there he lay, groaning and in obvious pain, for several seconds as he regained his strength and courage. He had to keep moving, for Naruto. Pakken came running back, worry sparkling in his eyes as bright as fire. Kakashi, are you alright? He asked, circling around Kakashi and nudging him gently. Kakashi groaned and sat up, head bowed and chest heaving, taking in deep lungfuls of air. I'm fine. We should keep going. As Kakashi spoke, he heaved himself to his feet. He swayed uncertainly when he had reached his full height, and he had to lean against a tree for what felt like minutes. Man, those ninja back there really took it out of you. Pakken muttered almost to himself. Kakashi nodded and immediately wished he hadn't. His head felt alive with bees. Unfortunately there were more than expected. Kakashi muttered, remembering the fighting that had occurred back in the forest. The original team that had been sent to retrieve Sasuke had left, and Kakashi had feared that they wouldn't be enough. He had followed their path and had found many of them still in battle, and losing. But each time he was going to go in and help, they had been joined by one of the Sand siblings, or their enemy was already defeated. Kakashi had moved on each time, and each time he had been more hopeful that everything was going to turn out okay, it was all going to be alright. But then he had been ambushed, not by 1 or 2 or 3 ninja, but 5. He had fought for his life there. Clearly Orochimaru had thought like Kakashi, that the team he had sent wasn't enough. Though Kakashi had been strong enough to fight them off, it had cost him nearly all of his chakra. He doubted whether he could even summon a shadow clone, or summon one of his hounds. The only strength he had now was to run. Kakashi groaned once more, before slowly taking off in a run again. Pakken hesitantly followed, still wishing that Kakashi would take a little more time to rest. When he saw that Kakashi wasn't going to stop, Pakken took up his position in the lead again. This time Kakashi was extra careful to not trip again. The trees up ahead were seemingly opening up a path for the two, right up to the valley of the end. There, a still body lying in the water, the current swirling around it with the purpose of carrying it off. The two statues stood still and proud, glaring at each other for eternity. Kakashi's heart soared at the sight. A single body, a single boy. That was what he had been hoping for. There was still hope. Running up to it, Kakashi hardly noticed the cold water soaking through his pants, nor the spray of the waterfall so close to the still boy. The moon still shone on the water, giving it a sharp glimmer and reflection so strong it could have been mirroring a parallel universe. The joy of seeing the boy clouded Kakashi's vision even further, his short breath and deteriorating condition adding to that factor. Only when he nearly tripped over the boy did he notice that the mop of hair wasn't bright blonde. It was black. Sasuke! Oh no! Kakashi felt his knees buckle, his legs give way. He fell down, hitting the water and soaking everything up to his nose. His shoulders shook, his sobs muffled in the fabric covering his lower face. He felt defeated, utterly defeated. Kakashi! Naruto is over here. He's in a... Oh no! Pakken whispered as he saw Sasuke, but he had said enough already. Kakashi, can't you do something? What about first aid? Would that help? Pakken asked desperately, running back over to Naruto. Kakashi shook his head slowly, mind running at 1,000 miles an hour. No, they're dying and quickly. First aid would only give them minutes at best, and there's no one close enough to get to them that quickly. Kakashi explained. Isn't there some jutsu? Pakken asked again. He meant well. Kakashi knew that, but Pakken should be able to see the situation as it was. I don't have the chakra. Kakashi whispered in a voice so low Pakken had to strain to hear it. He then realized the situation that they were in, and he decided to fall silent. This was something that Kakashi had to decide on his own. Kakashi gulped loudly as he stared at Sasuke. It was all he could do. This was a one-way trip. Choose between saving a boy you'd trained and found yourself caring for and worrying over, or a boy who tried to kill the previous and who you'd only save because ordered to do so. Could I? No. Shadow clones have my energy. I barely have enough to keep myself going. Carrying even one is going to be challenging. I'm stuck. Kakashi thought, a rising sense of doom and dread welling up in his throat. Tears pricked at his eyes like sharp little needles, and Kakashi bowed his head before Sasuke's prone body. He needed to make a decision now. I'm just a solider, just a pawn. I have to do as ordered. The enemy seems to need Sasuke. To survive we need to take that away from them. Kakashi thought miserably. Orochimaru wants Sasuke badly. That's reason enough to choose Sasuke. But Naruto is a Jinchuriki. He's powerful, more so than Sasuke. But if I leave Sasuke here and Orochimaru finds him, Orochimaru wouldn't take Naruto if he found him. Naruto is good, too good for Orochimaru to bend to his will. But he would take Sasuke, because he's already been marked and is easier to bend. And if Naruto dies, so does the nine-tailed beast. If Sasuke dies, there goes the last of the Uchiha. It was becoming clearer to Kakashi what was the right, the better path to follow. It was heartbreaking, and it was turning Kakashi's insides inside out. He felt pitiful then, truly pitiful. Even though they were both his teammates, and even though Kakashi had seen himself in Sasuke, Kakashi didn't want this. He didn't want this decision because he knew what he was going to do, and he didn't want to do it. Naruto deserved life. Naruto deserved to live and know what life felt like. He deserved to know that he had changed another person's life, a person who is also a Jinchuriki. But he would never get that chance, because of Sasuke and the decision that Kakashi now had to make. More accurately, the decision that Kakashi now had to act out. Kakashi, what are we going to do? Pakken asked, knowing that if they didn't move now the boys would most likely die no matter what. As Kakashi carelessly wiped his eyes with his sleeve, he hardened his heart, hardened his mind. What had he expected? That being a ninja was going to be as easy as counting? He should know better already. It's never like the stories say. Shaking from the single hole in his heart that hadn't yet been covered with stone, Kakashi heaved himself to his feet. He stumbled at the first step, quickly regained his composure and stooped to pick up Sasuke. He was bleeding from multiple wounds, several very deep and in urgent need of treatment. Kakashi stared at the boy, then turned on his heel and walked off towards the forest. But Kakashi, Naruto is right over there. If we just... No, I can't even look at him. Let's just leave. Kakashi whispered, his grip on the boy tightening. He shook with every step he took. The edges of his vision had ceased being red. It was a relief. His breath was coming back easier now. But Kakashi, Pakken ventured uneasily. No! Kakashi roared, swinging back around to face Pakken. And instead his eyes went instantly to Naruto. Eyes closed, blood staining his whiskers, clothes torn and ripped, his life's blood being washed away by the current. And then something happened. Something that Kakashi never forgot. Naruto opened his eyes. He opened his eyes and stared right at Kakashi. There was pain and agony in those clear blue eyes. Then there was hope. So much hope because he had seen Kakashi. He slowly, agonizingly, raised one hand towards Kakashi, whispered words that were unheard, words that were filled with happiness and joy. He tried crawling to Kakashi, lost his strength, and then tried again. Like Kakashi knew he would. Naruto never gave up. Never. And now Kakashi had to betray him. With a heart as heavy as lead, Kakashi turned away, missing the anguish and total confusion in Naruto's now darkening eyes. I'm sorry, Naruto, Kakashi whispered, before leaping off into the darkness. Pakken followed, but not after turning around to glance at Naruto. Those eyes, those confused and yet still hopeful eyes, turned on Pakken. Pakken swallowed the lump in his throat. What else was he to do? He was just a small dog, far away from home with no one around but Kakashi, and he was too busy carrying Sasuke. No, Naruto had to be left behind. He'd be remembered as a hero by everyone, but he'd be left behind. Then Pakken 2 leapt away into the enfolding darkness, leaving a gasping Naruto behind. A Naruto who suddenly realized with astonishing clarity that he had been left to die by one of the people he had trusted most. The fight should have been around here. Deidara spoke more to himself than his partner, Sasori. Indeed, Sasori replied. His gaze shifted to the two tall statues standing facing each other, the Uchiha and the first Hokage. How ironic that now Naruto and Sasuke fought beneath their shadows. They are finely carved, but they aren't. Deidara chuckled to himself on his purposeful play on words. Sasori ignored him. For him, such a ridiculous attempt at being humorous was beyond his attention. They reached the edge of the waterfall and peered down into the darkness. The water was a bright glimmer, and the forest a dark foreboding fortress. It was a long way down, the water shooting mist up so the two could feel the cool on their faces. Deidara sighed at the sight. Well, only one body down there. Don't know if it's that Uchiha brat or the other one. One way to find out. Don't keep me waiting. Sasori grunted. What, you staying up here? Well, whatever. Deidara, left to himself, released the clay in his hands and made a flying bird. Jumping on, he quickly descended down to the body. The closer he came, the more of the blonde glimmered on the head of the boy. Nope, definitely not Sasuke. Deidara muttered as he jumped off and strode over to the still conscious boy. Now what are we going to do with a runt like you? Naruto tried to move, not even he knew why he did it, and all Deidara did was frown at the boy. Close to death and still trying to move. Well, lucky for you I'm not in a killing mood. Who knows, maybe we could even use you. Deidara swung the boy onto his shoulder and leapt back onto his bird, not minding the grunt and scream that were torn from Naruto's throat at the rough handling. Together they flew back up to Sasori. What you bring the kid for? Was his first question to his blonde partner. Because we might find use for him. His friends clearly left him. I saw tracks coming from the forest and then going back. He probably hates them right now, and that could come in handy. Besides, Pain thinks we're bringing someone back, so we'll bring someone back. And if we let him die, we lose our plan. Deidara explained, quickly thinking on the spot. Sasori seemed to take it after a moment of looking at the silently protesting boy. What will we tell him? He'll die when we take the beast from him. We can keep that hidden if we use him and make him one of us. Sasori questioned. Deidara shrugged, carelessly hurting Naruto further. Why keep it from him? We have our ways to bring him back. Sasori stared at his partner with clear, intelligent eyes. He was clearly thinking things through. Then, without a sound, Sasori turned back the way they had come. At least you didn't keep me waiting, he muttered just loud enough for Deidara to hear. I never would, my man, never would. Deidara waved off Sasori, letting his bird snap out of existence and carrying Naruto on his shoulder. The last thing Naruto saw before he blacked out was the receding statues, and the path for the leaf slowly fading away. For Naruto, that was the most symbolic thing in his life. Yeah, it's not like I can actually change that. You know, it's just something that I do. Art is an explosion. An explosion, I tell you. Art is a fleeting moment of beauty before it explodes and is gone forever. Would you shut up about your sharks? It's getting boring. Art is everlasting. Beauty that is captured and preserved forever. Your ridiculous notion that art is something explosive is just that. Ridiculous. No, I'd love to hear about same sense sharks. I find them as fascinating as toys and masks and everything else. Does anyone have anything to eat? I'm getting hungry. Would you shut up, Toby? This doesn't concern you. Naruto smiled as he walked into the common room. It wasn't every day that the Akatsuki were all together as they were. Minus Pain, of course. Even Karasu had managed to join everyone from her secret activities in the north. This noise and constant arguing now made sense to Naruto. He remembered well when it had been something irritating and annoying. Now it seemed it was just life. Everyone argued. That was how they showed they cared. They were battle-hardened murderous ninja. They weren't exactly going to write a love poem about their feelings. Deidara and Sasori were arguing over art, as usual, and Deidara was thrusting his hands into his clay and making small creatures, then exploding them in Sasori's face. Sasori's tail was twitching to and fro while he tried to keep calm. Zetsu was talking to no one, only muttering about how hungry he was and occasionally staring at Karasu, who was cooking silently in the kitchen. Itachi and Kisame had been talking, Kisame boasting about some recent jutsu that he'd performed that had involved the sharks. Obviously Itachi had grown tired of Kisame's boasts and had told him to curb his tongue. At that, Toby had jumped in claiming he loved sharks and hearing about them. Toby was always trying to get on everyone's good side. Kakashi and Hayden were silently arguing in the corner, a rarity for the both of them, with Conan lurking close by in case things got out of hand. Yet it was just an ordinary day in the hideout. In fact, it was a day of celebration, the reason why everyone had gathered. Karasu was whipping up a storm in the kitchen, and by the smells that wafted from the oven it was nearly finished. "Hey Naruto, come over here a minute will you?" Karasu waved Naruto over. He wove around the bright red couch and glass coffee table, the long dining table that sat 15 people into the kitchen that was divided by a long island bench. Zetsu had found himself a seat there and was staring right at Karasu. "What is it?" Naruto asked gruffly. Since he had been picked up 3 years ago his voice had certainly changed, and so had his attitude. No longer was he loud and annoying, with a squeaky voice to match. He was calm, cool and contained. His voice had finally broken, giving him a gruff deep sound. He liked it. "Set the table," Karasu told him, stirring at the large tub that held batter for some concoction. "What? Why me?" Naruto objected instantly. "Because Hayden and Kakashi are about to tear each other's throats out. Toby is hiding from Kisame and Itachi is glaring at him with his eyes. Deidara and Sasori are exploding art everywhere. Conan is babysitting Hayden and Kakashi and Zetsu is so hungry he'd eat the plates. Do you have a problem with that?" Karasu snapped, bright blue eyes flashing a storm. Sometimes Karasu was known as the sweet Akatsuki. It was at moments like these that Naruto found it hard to believe that name had stuck. Alright, I'll go set the table," Naruto muttered, beginning to slam open dark cupboards doors to find the large white plates that could feed an entire village. "Don't slam things around," Karasu snapped without turning around from her steaming pants. Naruto muttered an apology and went about his work. Carefully. Halfway through the work he looked around at his new home. Memories still lurked in his mind, memories that he knew he'd be keeping for a long time. He remembered the leaf, remembered training with Kakashi and meeting all those new exciting people. He remembered Gaara and fighting him, and the old toad man, the Hokage and finding the new Hokage. Everything came and went in his mind. The triumphs, the failures, the hard work, and of course being left behind to die. He had seen Kakashi see him, had seen him turn away and run off. Not even Pakken had bothered to help him. Naruto had been lying there, knowing death was closing in, when Deidara had found him. At the time Naruto had been horrified, thinking that he would never turn to their side. But a few good months with them had changed all that. Now, this was his home. The cavern was as big as 10 houses placed on top of each other, the lights that hung down needing a cord that was at least 50 meters long. The gaming corner with the foosball table and checkers. The ground that had been carpeted until there wasn't much of the original smooth, worn-out stone left showing. The constant bickering that now was music to his ears. Even annoying Toby was something to look forward to at the end of the day. Also, Naruto had grown a healthy hatred of the leaf. They had deserted him. They hadn't come looking for him. He hadn't seen a single effort from them to locate him, not even his body. He had checked multiple times, and only once had they come back, and that was morning after he'd been found. At first Naruto was overjoyed that had tried to reach them, but Kakashi had held him back. Kakashi, Hayden, Deidara and Sasori had been assigned to take him back. If it had been Itachi, Naruto would have suspected some foul play, as his eyes might have made him see things that weren't real. Instead, Naruto had seen Pakken and Kakashi walk to where Naruto had been dying, look around, and then walk straight back into the forest. "See that, kid? They don't even care. They could be looking for you, looking down the river, but no, they're just leaving you to rot," Hayden had said, chuckling quietly. No, they wouldn't. They'll come searching for me. I swear they will. I'm important to them." Naruto had fought. His wounds had still been stinging, and were in danger of opening up. Someone had healed him with medical jutsu the night before. "Oh really? Well, if in 6 months they still don't come, you're one of us," Kakashi had whispered loud enough for everyone else to hear. A sort of hissing whisper that sounded like snakes. "And if they do come?" Naruto had asked defiantly. "Then it's fair game." Sasori had groaned before turning to walk back to the hideout. They had dragged Naruto along behind them, kicking and screaming as he called for Kakashi. 6 months and no one had come. 6 months of hopeful waiting, of a waiting that was so certain it nearly pained him to think back to it. Of course the leaf wouldn't come looking for him. He was expendable to them, always had been. He'd been the monster of the leaf, kept under watch in case he broke out and killed everyone. Then Karasu had come into the hideout, and been made his partner. Since then Naruto hadn't known he could feel too content, like he truly belonged somewhere, as much as he did. Naruto, snap out of it, you thick-headed oaf. Cutlery. Or do you want to become animals again? Karasu snapped, whacking the top of Naruto's head with a wooden spoon. Ooh! Naruto complained, rubbing the top of his head and glowering at Karasu. She only glared right back, eyes alight with fire and hair tousled and wild. She really was beautiful when she chose to be. In fact, she beautiful even if she tried to avoid being so. Her temper was the only problem Naruto could see. It could make even the mountains quiver. If you don't get to setting this place up in the next 10 seconds, then I'm going to make sure that your life will be a living hell. Now get to it. Karasu yelled the last part, yanking off her shoe and throwing it at Naruto. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Naruto yelled, performing the hand sign. Instantly 10 clouds of smoke came up around them, and perfect clones appeared. They all ran for the cutlery drawer, grabbed their knives and forks, and ran back to the table setting it all up. The original Naruto smirked and crossed his arms gloatingly over his chest. What do you think about that? I think you're a lazy sod. Karasu snapped, her favorite type of speech, before throwing her other at Naruto. He dodged quickly, laughing as it hit one of the clones and made him vanish in a loud cloud of smog. Laughing, Naruto righted himself and walked smugly to his seat. And I think you're just making us wait for food now, because you are mad at me. What? But food? Zetsu groaned slowly, sliding off his seat and making his way to his dining chair. Karasu rolled her eyes and dished out the food she had prepared onto serving platters, sliding them down the long table. No one had noticed. Everyone was still arguing, though some stomachs had been rumbling loudly for some time. If no one comes to get this food right now, I shall personally see to it that you all burn. Karasu screamed at them, sinking herself into her seat and staring at everyone with a look that could kill. Instantly the cavernous room was silent, all eyes turning towards the table. Suddenly they all began to run, tripping over everyone else in their way so they could throw themselves into the chairs closest to their favorite food. Deidara came to a chair before Kisame, who flashed his teeth and sat next to Deidara. Sasori threw Haiden off a chair that he had claimed long ago, much to Haiden's shouting and cursing, which was cut off by Karasu, and so on. Finally, when the dust had settled, and everyone was staring at the food waiting for Karasu's permission to eat, did Karasu give a hearty nod. Once again chaos erupted around the table, but this time it was a chaos that was nice. Everyone reaching to grab food, piling their plates high, and laughing at the smallest of things. Smiling, Naruto leaned back in his chair. Oh yes, this was definitely better than the leaf had ever been. Knock knock. Come in, Tsunade yelled at the closed door. She was in a particularly grouchy mood that day. On the finest of days, the sun was shining, the birds twittering in their nests high above the ground. The village was bustling with life and energy, stores were open for longer, especially the ramen store, and bad news hadn't been heard for a long time. On other days this would be a marvelous occasion celebrated with sake. Today all Tsunade felt like doing was visit the graveyard and pay homage to her brother and a friend who she had lost. Kakashi came in slowly, hesitantly, as if fearing what he would see inside. His one eye still held a tinge of red as if he had been rubbing it repeatedly for a few hours. His hair was mussed, probably hadn't brushed it since he'd crawled out of bed, and he was running his hand through it repeatedly. Kakashi, I was expecting you here today. What can I do for you? Tsunade asked. She too didn't look her finest, with dark bags hanging under her eyes and hair that had been clumsily tied into pigtails, tufts of it still to pass underneath the hair bands. My lady, I am not here for the reasons you may think. Kakashi managed to push out his mouth. His words were as heavy as lead on the air, and as thick to get out. The burden he felt was obviously tremendous. No? Well, is it important? Tsunade asked, entwining her hands together in front of her mouth. She would not have Kakashi see her lips tremble. It's about the Akatsuki. Oh, not today, Kakashi! Tsunade thundered, throwing herself back in her chair. Her eyes narrowed down to tiny slits, and their weight rested fully on the dismal Kakashi. Isn't today enough of a bad omen without the news of these blasted Akatsuki? And that with the added protection needed for the Lord Kazekage, I cannot manage all of this at once. Unfortunately, no. Tsunade was close to wailing. Her secretary had quit after the village had been told of Naruto's death, along with the little pig. Tsunade couldn't even remember their names. Shizuke, Shinuo, something like that. Hokage, may I remind you of your duty? Yes, today is a sad day, but for the good of our village and our land you must hear this. Kakashi loudly and sternly halted Tsunade's irrational, unbalanced thinking. Tsunade was taken aback. She reeled in her seat, eyes fastened on Kakashi, taking in deep breaths through her nose and exhaling through her mouth. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, she had pulled herself together enough to have considered listening to the news on the Akatsuki, an organization that had been apparently growing more and more vibrant since Naruto's death. "Alright, go on," Tsunade whispered. "Alright, there are rumors that ninja in black cloaks with red clouds have been roaming the countryside. Some have even been spotted outside the Sand Village and the Leaf Village. Their activity has increased enormously these last couple of months. These are just the latest reports," Kakashi informed Tsunade, throwing a large pile of papers on Tsunade's heavy desk. Every single one of those papers was a filed report on an Akatsuki sighting. "Thank you, Kakashi," Tsunade groaned, rubbing her temple. Papers irritated her, and she fired nearly every secretary that came her way for being incompetent. If only Shizune had stuck around. "Thank you, Hokage." Kakashi attempted to take his leave. He was feeling the need to visit someone for the day. However, the Hokage had other plans. "You never really told me what happened back there, at the Valley of the End." The Hokage's voice was soft, delicate. It was as if she was afraid if she spoke too loud, the words would leave her. Kakashi's retreating form stopped short of the door, hand outstretched to grasp the handle. Tears were welling in Kakashi's eyes as his mind replayed the moments again and again and again. Running away with Sasuke in his arms, beating the medical ninjas at the halfway point and demanding that they go in search of Naruto, that the boy was near death. Only 2 had left, 4 others had stayed with him, Sasuke and Pakken. They had given him something, and he remembered feeling ill, dizzy, and then feeling the ground rush up to his face. The numbing pain that went with it. He had never spoken a word of it, not even in a report. It had been pretty clear from their arrival what had happened, and the reports of the medical ninjas had only further proved everyone's worst suspicions. Do you honestly want to know?" Kakashi whispered so quietly Tsunade had to lean forwards to hear. "Of course. Naruto was my friend. He may have been knuckle-headed, but he had the true strength of a future Hokage. He was the light that changed people, and he died. Now, I want to know how and why." Tsunade spoke with a confidence that hadn't been heard since Naruto's death. Her eyes flashed as Kakashi drew breath to refuse her, and he suddenly knew that Tsunade would always be asking, always be demanding the answers to the question most of the village wanted answered. As well as that, the Hokage had given him an indirect demand, and he was only a Junin. "I saw both there, in pools of blood. I had to take Sasuke. Orochimaru wanted him. Those were my orders. As I left Naruto, he saw me. He tried to reach out to me. I left. I had to. The medics say and no body was found." Kakashi began choking on every word, the horrible images and thoughts never leaving his head. What would it have been like for Naruto to see him just walk away? What if? Was he in pain? In the end, had Naruto felt pain? And you were not strong enough to make a copy of yourself. If you had, none of you would have made it," Tsunade whispered, piecing together the last, missing puzzle. Kakashi said nothing, only opened the door and rushed outside. The door clanged shut. Tsunade sat there, the papers all over her desk, hands clasped in front of her face with hollow eyes, rings under her eyes. She sighed heavily, her mind weighed down just as Kakashi's was. Beside her she saw some sake, and quickly threw it down her throat. It was strong, and she savored the burning taste. It was time for some more. She screamed at the closed door of her new secretary, a young man whose name Tsunade didn't care to remember. She'd only fire him soon anyway. Sakura was walking aimlessly through the village. So far she had encountered Kiba, sitting with a fully grown Akamura beneath a low-hanging tree, just staring at nothing, and Choji, who had only eaten 1 bag of chips. Naruto's favorite ramen store was giving away free ramen, yet no one really felt like eating any. Looking over there, the flaps waving loosely in the slight breeze, Sakura could nearly see the blonde-haired kid, sitting there slurping down ramen like there was no tomorrow. Sakura looked away, tears welling in her turquoise eyes. Tomorrow everything would be kind of back to normal. Ramen would be costly and people would be walking around with a spring in their step. Where was Sasuke? He blamed himself completely for Naruto's death, always wailing about how he shouldn't have listened to Orochimaru, How he should have been stronger. How he should have realized that his real family wasn't Konoha. On the anniversary he was always at his worst. Sometimes he even visited Uchiha's former village, staring at everything and touching everything, but never making a sound. Up ahead was the gate. No stragglers would be here today. The pathway outside looked so lovely, so green. Large trees hanging over the pathway, giving soft shade. Emerald grass stretched its leaf towards the glistening blue sky, and little flowers popped up everywhere giving the world some color. "Hey Katatsu, hey Izumo." Sakura greeted the two playing checkers. They looked up and gave her a soft wave and the faintest of smiles. "Hey Sakura, how you holding up?" Katatsu asked, his shaggy black hair having seemingly more spikes than usual. Sakura shrugged and looked out at the perfect world. Behind her was only sadness and mooching, grumbling ninjas. How she'd love to run out and away from everything, taking some time for herself. As much as can be expected, I guess. Sakura tried for her trademark easy smile with closed eyes. It didn't work as well as she had hoped, but at least it stopped the two ninjas from asking any more questions. Sakura opened her eyes to look once more outside, then go in search of Sasuke, when she saw something shift. Just for an instant she thought she saw, for that moment, blonde hair and slitted blue eyes that held hatred and menace in them, and she gasped, recoiling as if she had been hit. Katatsu and Izumo, startled into action, sprung up and snapped their heads towards the forests. But they saw nothing. "Sakura, what is it?" Izumo asked worriedly, staring at her and then the forests with wide eyes, searching for something that could have caused that reaction. Slowly, Sakura's hands found their places by her sides again, her mouth gently closing itself. "And nothing. I just thought I saw someone." Sakura whispered the last part, staring at where the figure had been. There was nothing there, no sign that someone had passed. No grass slowly rising back into position, not trees moving a little strangely. Even the birds kept their loving songs. "Yeah, it was nothing. I'm sorry to have worried you, but I should be getting back now. I need to find Sasuke. Goodbye." Sakura called, waving cheerfully. Izumo and Katatsu looked at each other in hesitant confusion, unsure if they wanted to know what had caused that gasp. They peered once again to the forest, but they didn't see the dark shadow of a girl watching them intently, black hair flowing down her back like dark angel's wings. Sasuke glanced around the empty room. He didn't know where he was, somewhere on the outskirts of the village probably. It was falling to ruins, rubble strewed across the floor like a giant's unwanted play blocks. The floor, Sasuke could see, used to be clean and scrubbed every day, but now it was covered in a fine layer of dust. Through the broken windows sunlight streamed in, showing the dancing particles, intricately weaving their way around each other. He didn't know why he had come to some stranger's abandoned house. Little did he know this was where Naruto had once partially lived. No one had known about it, that he had been attracted to a house overgrown with vines and a fox living inside it with kits. Not even Kakashi had known that, on weeknights when Naruto hadn't been able to sleep, he'd come to this house and kept it pristine, but allowing the vines to grow along the outside. Every spring yellow and blue flowers had sprouted with petals as large as small cats. Now here he stood, looking at little cards that had been placed on the walls. One was a fox's head, staring at him with a sheepish grin. Another was a bright pink blossom, beautiful in the sunlight. The third was of a black raven with burning coal-black eyes, its head cocked to one side. The last, hanging a little way away, was of a silver dog with long hair, one eye closed in peace, the other staring out at the world with bright blue eyes. They reminded him of someone, of a team, but his mind was hazy with pain and sadness, but most of all guilt. He didn't realize that these were symbols of his late team. "Sasuke." Sakura's clear voice rang through the small house. She pushed her way past the tangling vines, and saw Sasuke standing there staring at the cards. "Sakura?" Sasuke asked, his voice timid and wavering. He was now a Junin, same as Neji, Temari and Kankuro. Sakura, also, was a Junin. Soon the others would all be going for Junin as well, as soon as these stupid Chunin exams were over. "Yeah, it's me." Sakura smiled her wavering smile again, hands clasped in front of her. Her eyes sought Sasuke, sought the old fire and ladies' man that he had once been, but instead found only dark eyes with tears threatening to spill. "Oh Sasuke, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have left you today. I'm so sorry. But everyone's gathering in the hall for the memorial." Sakura told Sasuke every year, on the anniversary, Konoha held a memorial where friends of Naruto's, and those that simply missed him, gathered in the hall and heard speeches and saw photos of Naruto. This year Gaara and Kiba were meant to be saying something. Sasuke, Sakura and Kakashi were always seated in the first row. Tissues were provided. I don't think I can go, Sakura. I mean, it's Naruto, I know, but I'm the reason he's dead. Sasuke groaned, holding his head in his hands. No, it's not. No one blames you, we all blame Orochimaru. That little snake. Why, if he hadn't set his sights on you and forced you into doing what you did, manipulated you with sweet talk, nothing would have happened. Now come on, don't talk nonsense, it's Naruto's memorial. We were a team, we have to go. Sakura spoke with such confidence and heat it actually startled Sasuke a little. He hadn't heard Sakura speak like that since 3 years ago. I was weak, Sakura. It's all because of me. If I had been strong, Orochimaru wouldn't have gotten his claws in me, and I wouldn't have fallen for his stupid parlor tricks. Sasuke fired back after he had regained his breath and mind. Orochimaru is a skilled ninja. He's one of the 3 legends or whatever they're called. Not even Kakashi could beat him. How do you expect to? Sakura cried out. Their voices had reached the level of yelling. I didn't need to beat him. Just be strong enough to not be subdued and hypnotized. Sasuke screamed, hands balling into fists beside him. And you two need to shut up. The memorial for Naruto is beginning and you two aren't there. His teammates pulled it together. Kakashi yelled from the window just as Sakura opened her mouth. What reply? The two swung their heads around in shock, and saw their mentor and teacher parting the vines with his head, pollen coating his silvery fine hair. The two burst out into fits of giggles, staring at their mentor as he looked at them, eyes half-lighted in his desperation to sneeze. Eyes no fu, I guess. Kakashi groaned, rubbing his nose so harshly the pollen dropped off onto his shoulders. He gave a gigantic sneeze and sighed in relief. Oh, it's not. I'm sorry, Kakashi. It's easy for those who haven't got hay fever to laugh at those who do, Sakura said amidst her giggles. Sasuke still hadn't stopped and begun angrily wiping his eyes, causing them to grow red. Kakashi smiled lazily at his team, glad that they were happy and laughing on this day. Then he saw the fox, flower, raven and dog and sighed. Do you realize where we might be standing? Kakashi asked everyone. They stopped their giggles with little coughs and gasps for breath. Sasuke standing up to his full height once more and smoothing back his slick black hair. He was wearing the same clothing he would have worn if he had walked with Orochimaru, without the purple booty on his back. A katana hung loosely on his hip. In an abandoned house? Sakura questioned, her previous rage and anger having been dissipated by the laughter. Look at the pictures. Everyone turned to look at them. Sakura instantly knew what they were, but Sasuke needed a little more explaining. One fox. Naruto had the fox inside of him, one cherry blossom, one raven with black eyes and one silver dog. I knew Naruto had a house on the outskirts of town, I just didn't know where. He kept it hidden from everyone. Kakashi explained. It was suddenly silent, quieter than before Sakura had arrived. The birds had stopped their songs, the breeze had stopped shifting fallen leaves and the bees had finished gathering the pollen. We should turn it around, Sakura suggested. Everyone looked to Sasuke. They didn't know why, but it felt right that he should do it. Perhaps to still his guilt, perhaps as an apology to Naruto, but whatever the reason, Sasuke agreed with them. He slowly reached a shaking hand forward, hesitated for an instant to calm his nerves, and lifted the little card gently, with as much love and care as he wished he could have shown Naruto. He turned it around so the fox faced the wall. Until the afterlife, where I hope you can forgive me, Sasuke whispered, a single tear slipping out of one eye. He believed he had cried too much in the past 3 years, yet he sometimes couldn't stop himself. It's time to go. We're late, and Gaara and Kiba won't begin before you're there, Kakashi told them, and together they walked through the town, casting glances back at the abandoned house as they went. No one noticed the hand that reached out from the vines and turned the fox around, or the menacing blue eye with the words "I'll never forgive you" hissed alongside it. Naruto, you can hardly expect to run off like this without having to discuss it first with the rest of us. Karasu spoke harshly as she leaned against Naruto's doorframe, watching him throw a few essentials in one of his bags. This is important. If we hit him now when he's vulnerable, it'll be easier to defeat him. Naruto growled angrily. His eyes were constantly flashing from bright blue to dark red. He had managed to make friends with the fox spirit, and the two regularly shared the body and strength. even had lengthy discussions. But he's with his siblings, both are Junin. If you hit him now, not only are you putting yourself at risk but all of us. Karasu tried to reason with him, letting him pass her and into the narrow earth hallway. Doors lined one side of the hallway, the other had glowing, eerie red lights on it. Persian rugs dotted the floor, each stranger and more intricate than the last. Each ninja had decorated their own room as well, and fitted stolen furniture inside. Naruto's walls were bare earth, with glowing lamps hanging on twisting, stretching metal holders. They were different colors, and they cast the room in an eerie light. There was a main light, large and spiraling, that washed the room in white light. His bed stood in the middle, a double bed with crisp white sheets and a light brown wooden frame. Shaggy white rugs littered the floor, and there were large, leafy green plants wherever there wasn't a better idea for anything else. A wardrobe taller than Kizim, a small television surrounded by beanbags and square glass tables that could only hold one bowl, and a large fish tank filled with tropical fish. It was Naruto's pride and joy, and Kizim was insanely jealous. There was also a small flap for the local foxes to come inside. Naruto adored them, and they adored him. He'd spend most afternoons watching them, laughing and speaking with them as if they were friends. He was a light-hearted ninja, dragged down by his past and the friends who had left him for dead without a second thought. Karasu understood his hatred towards them. She too could name a few that she wanted to bring down, but Karasu also understood the ninja's powers and abilities. If Naruto went now, he'd need backup, and he was so close to refusing it. Naruto, would you please just stop? Karasu snapped, running after him. His pace forced her into a steady jog. The hallway wound around like a giant circle, which it was in fact. It surrounded the main rooms, the living, dining and kitchen. The walls of the hallway were the walls of the kitchen. There was no doorway, just a widening of space. If a ninja wasn't familiar with the living quarters of the Akatsuki, they may have stopped in surprise to find themselves bathed in what seemed to be natural light, and facing a large space with ambling ninja here and there. Tobi and Deidara were at it again by the kitchen counter. Kizim was pacing about the waterfall angrily, probably waiting for Itachi to return from something he had to take care of by himself, and Haiden was cleaning his blade while watching a strange episode where two ninja hunted down supernatural creatures. One was always getting killed, or finding out that they had demon blood inside of them, and there was always blood being spilled. It was no wonder Haiden found it so entertaining. Naruto! Karasu snapped loudly enough for everyone to stop what they were doing and peer curiously at the two ninja. Konan flitted into the room on the opposite side. What? Naruto snapped right back, eyes blazing with fury. Strangely enough, they kept their blue shade. Perhaps the fox didn't feel like meddling with such puny affairs. If you're going to do this, I'm coming with you, and there's nothing you can do about that. Karasu growled, hands balling into fists at her side. She was Naruto's partner after all, and earlier it had been decided that Deidara and Sasori were going to take care of this together. No matter how hard Naruto had been training, how much he had improved, he'd need Karasu along with him. I don't need help, Naruto muttered, turning back around and pulling on his cloak. He looked down at his bag, decided against taking it, and threw it on the ground. He'll be raiding some village for food then, I presume. Karasu thought approvingly to herself. Yes, you do, Karasu stated firmly, walking towards Naruto and the exit. What's going on? Deidara asked, walking around the wide-eyed Tobi and towards the two arguing ninja. Karasu sighed in annoyance and ran a hand through her ebony hair. Naruto could be such a pain sometimes. Naruto wants to hunt down Gaara and take him on by himself. He's returning from Konoha with Temari and Kankuro, Karasu explained shortly. Deidara laughed and whistled through his teeth. That's a little dangerous, son. He chuckled, looking at Naruto with newfound respect. Karasu slapped his arm harshly. It's nothing to be proud of. He's acting out of anger and needs to accept that if he's going, then so am I, Karasu informed, narrowing her eyes at Naruto. He still stood just ready to leave, cloak billowing around him from the force of the waterfall. Spray misted his hair and cheeks, but he didn't even seem to notice. Looks like someone has a crush, Haiden sang, grinning evilly from the plush couch. Ooh, I hear wedding bells, Tobi cried like a child, giggling with his hands in front of his mask. Karasu scoffed at them and decided to ignore them. This was meant to be for Sasori and Deidara, and they were going to go together. Yeah, we're Akatsuki, and yeah, we can take on anyone, but we're not idiots. We have teams for a reason. Karasu snapped angrily. She stared down Naruto with slitted eyes, and he returned the favor. Suddenly there was silence. All you could hear with the waterfall crashing down to earth and the ticking of a clock in the kitchen. Everyone was watching now, waiting to hear what Naruto would say. Karasu was certain that if he refused her, Konan would step in, maybe even ban him from leaving before Gaara had his sand creature taken out of him. This is exciting. Karasu heard Toby whisper shrilly to Konan, who only glared at him. Toby hopped down from a stool and made his way to the couch, arms swinging about him lazily. He sat down heavily, throwing his feet in the air and landing them right next to Haiden, who growled and threatened to snap them off if he wasn't careful. Naruto. Karasu spoke normally, eyes returning to their normal stance. Deidara moved behind her and began whispering painfully in her ear. He's going to say yes. You're going to go out together, and he's going to propose. You're going to say yes and get married, By the time you come back, you'll be pregnant. We're going to have our first couple, he exclaimed, knowing how much it annoyed Karasu when the others made assumptions about her relationship with Naruto. They were just teammates, friends who looked out for each other. She swatted at the blonde like he was a pesky fly. Alright, come along if you must. We'll take him to the closest base to Konoha. Naruto spoke the name like it was poison on his tongue. Karasu smiled for the first time that day, and grabbed her cloak. She swung it on herself, checked her hips for weapons, and set off at a leisurely pace. Deidara returned to raiding the kitchen, chuckling and saying how Karasu and Naruto had saved him some time. Konan faded back into the shadows. Haiden nearly followed his promise of breaking Toby's legs, and Toby ran off to find something edible, possibly steal it from Deidara. Be ready, guys. Karasu called to the others, waving her hand excitedly. She was just like a child when she found out she was going on a new mission. It always gave her a thrill, especially when the ninjas they were going face were as strong as the Sand siblings. Naruto, why are we going to the Leaf base? We leave Temari and Kankuro alive, they go warn the Leaf and they come and find us. We're going to need some time to extract the Sand creature thing, why risk it? Karasu asked as an afterthought. She generally tended to trust Naruto with these things, but it just didn't seem sensible to work like this. Because, they're going to need to warn the Sand village of what has transpired, and they're going to need to find us. With your skills we should be able to keep them at bay for some time. I also want to shock them. Seeing an Akatsuki who looks like me, when they think I'm dead, it's going to be terrifying for them. Then, in that instant that they see us, we vanish, leaving them without anything. Naruto smirked at his own plan, walking out of the waterfall and into the bright sunlight. Karasu rolled her eyes at the sodden state she knew he'd be in, and went around it her way, vanishing in a puff of black smoke and reappearing beside Naruto. Gaara was walking along the pathway with Temari and Kankuro on either side. He had given his speech on Naruto 3 days ago, and now had matters to attend to at home. Apparently without him the village couldn't run itself. Gaara casually controlled the sand at his feet, making it swirl around and twist by his ankles like a pet snake. It soothed him, and at this time every year he certainly needed a lot of soothing. His speech had been about how he had once been filled with hate and loathing to those that believed in love. Then he had met Naruto, admittedly fought with him and turned into Shukaku. Only after he had battled Naruto had he come to realize what love, family and life meant. It had been long, and many had sniffled or cried during it. Sakura hadn't been able to hold in her tears, and Sasuke had been silent the entire time, his eyes never leaving a certain area of the wall. Temari's hand was continuously reaching up to touch her fan, and Kankuro was clearly on edge, eyes darting to and fro and muscles tensed and ready. Gaara wanted to ask them what was so wrong, why they couldn't relax in the early morning sunshine, underneath a pure blue sky without clouds. The trees rustled on the side of the path, and Kankuro nearly jumped out of his skin. A startled rabbit came bounding out and ran like the wind across the path. Kankuro let out a sigh of relief. Only a rabbit. He grinned at the others. Gaara nodded in agreement, but Temari was unsure. Didn't you notice that that rabbit didn't even notice us? I think something scared it before it came out, Temari observed, anxiously moving her fan around its holder so it would be easy to retrieve if it came to a fight. Up ahead was a long stretch of rock bordered by dense forest. Either you chose to walk for 3 extra hours navigating the twisting, winding pathway through the forest, or you chose to walk across the rock, in full exposure but needing only 10 minutes. For the Sand siblings there was usually no questioning. Yet today, for Temari, something felt off. Gaara, I think we should go through the forest. It's not as exposed, and it should be safer. Temari whispered harshly. Kankuro glanced incredulously at her. Don't be so scared, Temari. It takes so much longer going through the forest and there's no one here. The rabbit got freaked by us, it's no big deal. Kankuro chuckled, making his way easily onto the stone. He glanced around once, to satisfy Temari, and turned back grinned. There's not a soul in sight, sir. Kankuro chuckled. Temari flashed him a glare and cautiously made her way next to her brother. She too glanced around and saw no one. Also, fighting in the forest would be nearly impossible. It is far easier to fight on open ground, Gaara advised, walking up next to the two eldest siblings. He did not share his sister's misgivings, and felt completely at ease. They stood there for a moment, staring out at the open spaces with the wind lifting their hair from their eyes. Behind them was the road with the open, grassy forests. Apparently there had been a curse here long ago, a curse causing the ground to solidify and the forests to allow no one to pass, only those with a black heart. The ninjas of Tsunagakure and Konoha had managed to hack out a path after many years of trying. Let's get a move on. We want to be there early, right? Kankuro spoke cheerfully, holding his hands behind his head. His muscles were still tensed. Temari looked around once more nervously before continuing with her two brothers. No one noticed the dark form in the forest watching them, timing their every move. 5 minutes of the Sand siblings walking on the stone and nothing had happened. The forest had grown thicker around them, and even Temari walked with a little spring in her step. That was until they saw someone up ahead. A girl, with eyes as black as the night and hair as long as a short cape, its ebony hair seemingly reflecting the sunlight. She wasn't pale, and she walked along just as casually as Temari had a few moments earlier. The boys didn't seem to mind seeing another traveler. It's a well-used route. Temari calmed down. It's just some kid. Kankuro hissed in Temari's ear. Hello. Gaara greeted the girl. She jerked her head up like she hadn't noticed them. She smiled a little absent-mindedly. Oh hello. My apologies, I did not notice I was not alone. Beautiful day for traveling, is it not? The girl spoke formally, her smile twitching to a polite one. Her eyes quickly roamed over them, taking in everything about them. The three felt suddenly naked. Indeed. But we are in an awful hurry, sorry to be rude. Temari spoke quickly and began walking again. Are you not the legendary Sand siblings? I've heard so much about you, and especially you, Gaara of the Sand. The girl spoke again, the smile lessening. Her eyes were roaming over their faces quite casually now, as if she had already memorized every detail. Well, legendary are we? Kankuro asked smugly, turning around and flashing Temari a smirk. Temari huffed angrily and crossed her arms over her chest. She knew it was no time to be fooling around. Tsunagakure needed them. Indeed, in my small village we have heard many tales of your adventures. The girl complimented, moving closer every second. Temari suddenly had a glance at her eyes, and felt the bottom of her stomach fall to her toes. Before she hadn't felt comfortable looking into them. They were so black, so unusual, and they had raked them from head to toe. Now, looking into them for a split second, Temari saw an overwhelming amount of hatred smoldering below the surface. Kankuro, step away from her now. Temari hissed dangerously. Kankuro instantly recognized the tone and stepped uncertainly away from her. Temari? He whispered. What is it, Temari? See something? The girl asked innocently, tilting her head to one side curiously. Once again Temari saw those eyes, and a violent shiver racked her body. How could someone hate so much? What was worse, it wasn't uncontrolled, violent hatred that could be dealt with. That was explosive, but it went away. This was controlled, channeled and calm. This was hatred that lasted generations and hardly ever went away. She's dangerous. Temari growled, flicking out her fan and holding it in the ready position. Kankuro, quickly seeing his sister wasn't lying, and trusting her instincts, quickly unwrapped Scarecrow. Gaara's hand filed around him slowly. All eyes were on the girl. Indeed, I am. The girl smiled, and flung a cloak around her body. The sun was directly behind her, and so the Sand siblings didn't see the red clouds that dotted her cloak. But when they did, they quickly attacked. But before them was nothing but black smoke. A dark chuckle was emitted from behind them. I'm sorry, but I'm only fighting Temari and Kankuro. Gaara is saved for someone very special. The girl whispered, her eyes wild with anticipation and excitement. Who could possibly have saved Gaara? Temari seethed. She suddenly felt cool burning anger towards this girl, who threatened her little brother, who was part of the Akatsuki organization, A girl that was more dangerous than any other ninja they had faced. She seemed to innocently dangerous as well, like someone who didn't even know the full extent of their abilities. It scared Temari, knowing she was up against someone so formidable. "Hello, Gaara," a cool voice hissed. The voice was so cold, filled with bubbling anger and hatred. Like the girl, it seemed controlled and sent violent shivers down the three ninja spines. Only difference was, they all knew this voice, or at least who it had once belonged to. They all slowly turned around, fearing what they would be seeing. There, in front of them, was a grown Naruto. Blonde hair the same, ruffled and spiked. His whiskers had also grown longer, nearly reaching his ears. But that's where it all ended. His hands were stuffed inside the Akatsuki cloak's pockets, and his sparkling blue eyes were narrowed and directed at Gaara. He seemed to see no one else. And Naruto? Gaara whispered, knees knocking together and breath failing him. Temari had tears shooting to her eyes, not even noticing how much he had changed. Kankuro also felt like he had been punched in the stomach, all air being taken from him. Naruto tilted his head to one side. "Long time no see, friend." That's the end of this part, guys. If you want the next part, then like, subscribe and leave a comment saying so. This is Maelstrom signing off.